tremendous investment by the Chinese Communist Party government.
As ports get bigger, as more and more flows through the biggest ports, they become single points of failure in a global supply chain that used to be more robust.
Has approved the sale of U.S. steel to Nippon Steel. The deal is worth $28 billion.
Welcome to GVS Deep Dive. I'm Najma Minhas. In today's world, the real battleground isn't just in the South China Sea or in Ukraine. It's in the supply chains that power artificial intelligence, steel, and advanced technology. And the United States is quietly changing the rules again. From Japanese steel makers to America's biggest AI chip companies, Washington is turning its choke point control over critical industries into something new, a direct source of state power and even government revenue. In the past few months, the Trump administration has approved a Japanese takeover of the US Steel, but only after taking a golden share in the company. It has hinted at a radical overhaul of the US patent system and threatening to seize or relicense university patents. And now reports say it's pressurizing America's AI chip leaders, Nvidia and AMD, to hand over a cut of their China sales in exchange for export licenses. Different sectors, same strategy. A government shakedown. Nvidia and AMD have been told to hand over 15% of every AI chip sale that they make to China, directly to the US government, if they want export licenses. And now Intel CEO is in the firing line. This isn't just about chip policy. It's basically a toll booth on the future of AI. There's never been anything seen like this before. Now, we know that the United States has a massive debt problem. They've got $36 trillion worth of that. But to blackmail or take hostage nations and then American universities and now American companies in this way is verging on lunacy. Corporate leaders are basically holding their heads in their hands, wondering what on earth is going on and what will happen next. Yet most of them are too scared to speak out, fearful that they or their company will be attacked next by the administration. Yesterday, the New York Times published a story about the US government taking a cut in Nvidia and AMD sales in China. They said that the information was based on talking to 3 people who were familiar with the arrangement but did not yet have the permission to talk about it publicly. Both the Financial Times and the Wall Street Journal have now reported the same thing as well. A few weeks ago, the Trump administration revoked its earlier ban on Nvidia selling its H20 chips to China. The earlier ban was in April 2025. They revoked it in July 2025, but those licenses were still not issued. And it's believed that last week, when Jensen Huang, Nvidia's chief executive, met with President Trump at the White House, he agreed to give the federal government its 15% cut, essentially making the federal government a partner in Nvidia's business in China. The Commerce Department began granting licenses for those AI chip sales 2 days later. AMD also has an AI chip called the MI308, and in April, the Trump administration also banned those sales to China. Both companies were banned due to those fears that the technology could be used to close the gap between the United States and China in the development of artificial intelligence and the sectors in which it's going to be used. There are few precedents for the Commerce Department agreeing to grant licenses for exports in exchange for a share of revenue. Normally, export controls are justified solely on national security grounds. Trump is now allegedly converting that into an economic rent extraction tool, turning license approval into a conditional deal rather than a purely security-based decision. Another one of his art of the deals, it seems. Nvidia, which controls more than 90% of the market for chips needed to build the AI systems, recently became the first public company worth more than $4 trillion. And the president is said to have congratulated the CEO, Jensen Huang, on this accomplishment at the time. Little did he know then why those words may have been much more significant than Huang realized at the time. Donald Trump is increasingly taking an interventionist role in American company business deals, nothing of which has ever been seen in recent history. CEO Lip-Bu Tan, who is a Malaysian Chinese and a naturalized American citizen, having lived in the United States for the past 40 years. In a post on Truth Social, he unexpectedly called for Tan's ouster, claiming that he's conflicted by business ties to China. And he wrote, "The CEO of Intel is highly conflicted and must resign immediately. There's no other solution to this problem." Now, Intel CEO Lip-Bu Tan is set to visit the White House this Monday and no doubt pay homage to the emperor, which he hadn't done so yet. We will find out exactly what Trump extracted out of him later, I'm sure. In June, the administration approved an investment by Nippon Steel, a Japanese company, in US Steel in a deal that included a golden share in the company. This is a rarely used practice where the government takes a stake in the business. The Trump administration has also suggested that it may do a radical overhaul of the US patent fee system. Now, instead of those current flat fees which companies pay when they register a patent, typically a few $1,000s over the patent's lifespan, may require patent holders to pay 1 to 5% of the patent's assessed value to maintain it, potentially generating tens of billions of dollars in revenue. The administration is also using tariffs as a stick to bring manufacturing back to the United States. Last week, Mr. Trump said that technology companies would have to pay 100% tariff on semiconductors made abroad unless they invested in the United States. And several companies announced immediately that they would be investing in the US. They've also found another way to attack Harvard University. The administration is launching a comprehensive review of Harvard University's patent portfolio. They're targeting inventions funded by federal grants, and they're invoking what is called the Bayh-Dole Act. The Commerce Secretary Lutnick has signaled that the government may seize or relicense patents if Harvard is found to have violated disclosure, licensing, or domestic manufacturing requirements. Now, these are the different ideas which the Trump administration believes it will help it to raise revenue and potentially narrow the budget deficit that the government has. However, Trump is also on record saying that he wants to give the money back to the people if it's raised. In which case, if he doesn't use it to pay off the trillions in debt, but rather gives it away in short-term tax reductions, he would have gambled away a huge loss in US reputation for very little benefit. Now, coming back to the chip trade deal, China is a very important market for the artificial intelligence chips, both for Nvidia and for AMD. Nvidia was expected to sell more than $15 billion worth of H20 chips to China by the end of this year, and AMD is expected to sell around $800 million to $1 billion. If the rumor is correct that the United States government will take a cut, it then stands to make around $2 billion. Now, the administration has faced criticism from national security hawks, who claim this is going to be an own goal by helping China develop its AI systems. In July, two former national security officials from the first Trump administration, Matt Pottinger and David Feith, and 18 other people, including bipartisan people who've worked for the Joe Biden administration, wrote a letter to the administration calling the policy change a strategic misstep that endangers the United States' economic and military edge in artificial intelligence. The group said that the H20 would be a potent accelerator of China's frontier AI capabilities, not an outdated chip. And many believe that Jensen Huang, in order to sell his chips, has undersold or missold or misrepresented the technical capabilities of the H20 chip. However, the Trump administration has said that it will continue to prevent China from buying Nvidia's most advanced chips. We don't sell them our best stuff, not our second best stuff, not even our third best stuff, said Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, during an appearance on CNBC last month. Nvidia developed the H20 chip specifically for the Chinese market in 2023 after the Biden administration placed export restrictions on the more advanced AI chips. This particular chip uses what is known as the company's Hopper architecture, which allows for tens of thousands of cores or processing units that can each handle simultaneous computations, but which is less powerful than Nvidia's latest series, which is known as Blackwell. The chip isn't advanced enough to quickly train large language AI models, but it is useful for inference functions. So these are the processes by which the models that have already been trained can now draw conclusions when it gets new data. Jensen Huang was able to persuade Donald Trump to approve AI chip sales by arguing that preventing them would only hurt US tech companies. He successfully made the point that a ban would allow Huawei to dominate sales of AI chips in China, the world's largest semiconductor market, and it would pump the money it makes into research and development to close the gap between Huawei, Nvidia, and AMD and others. Now, I did do a detailed vlog on this. Please do check it out for much more details on this. I will put a link in the description below. Now, last month, China's internet regulator, the Cyberspace Administration of China, summoned Jensen Huang to China, claiming that the H20 chip could have a backdoor security risks. Now, since then, Chinese state media has discouraged local domestic companies from buying the H20 chip over this particular issue. However, last week, Nvidia published a blog saying that its AI chips do not have backdoors. It's also condemned a congressional effort to pass a law known as the Chip Security Act, which would require it to track its chips as a way to prevent the technology being smuggled to China. And they wrote in the blog, "There is no such thing as a good secret backdoor. Only dangerous vulnerabilities that need to be eliminated." The backroom deal with the chip makers is creating uncertainty in the markets. It's hitting investor confidence as well as investors' price in that the chance that the profits can be skimmed at any point in time by the government, depending on who Trump has decided to single out. Trump's public singling out of Intel CEO mirrors how he pressurizes foreign leaders and foreign companies, but applying it domestically risks politicizing corporate leadership changes. Now, there is, however, a danger that that could backfire even more, as it damages US credibility. Even further, as allies also see US export controls as cash grabs, undermining any joint work that they might be doing on technology restrictions. There is also the possibility that US firms may decide to move R&D offshore to escape United States control on its R&D and how it sells it and to whom it sells it. However, given Trump's threats of 100% tariffs on any company who doesn't invest in the United States, this is probably realistically not likely to happen. What will happen, though, is that rivals will accelerate efforts to bypass all these choke points that the United States increasingly is placing on them. And we know that China was already anticipating this in 2015 when it did its Made in China policy 2025. Overall, this could mark the start of a state capitalist era also in the United States foreign economic policy, where private companies once again become instruments of the United States government of United States geopolitical strategy. Thank you for giving me your time today. Do share with me your thoughts. Have a great day.